black delivery driver helps stranded bride in a thunderstorm, months later he walks into a church full of strangers. The rain pounded mercilessly against the church windows as Sarah Anderson stood alone on the empty street, her pristine white wedding dress now soaked and muddied. The abandoned bride clutched her wilting bouquet, mascara running down her cheeks not from the rain but from the weight of her decision. The expensive designer dress concealed more than just her trembling body, it held secrets that could destroy her family's empire. Through the curtain of rain, she spotted a delivery truck approaching. The driver, Marcus Thompson, had no idea that stopping to help would change both their lives forever. Watching this heartwarming story? Drop a comment with your location and hit like. Let's spread this touching moment across the world. Every like helps share this message of hope. Marcus Thompson never imagined that his weathered delivery truck would lead him to a moment that would change not just his life, but an entire community. At 32, the former Marine carried himself with quiet dignity, despite the weight of circumstances pressing down on his broad shoulders. His coffee-colored eyes, which had once watched over his unit in Afghanistan, now carefully scanned delivery routes, while harboring a deeper worry, a pending internal investigation threatening his livelihood at Anderson Delivery Services. Life hadn't been kind to Marcus lately. As a single father to 12-year-old Sophie, every shift meant another chance to provide his daughter with the opportunities he never had. His mother, Eleanor Thompson, once a respected military nurse, now lay in county hospital needing urgent surgery they couldn't afford. The cruel irony wasn't lost on him. The woman who had saved countless lives during Vietnam now couldn't save herself due to mounting medical bills. Sarah Anderson wore her privilege like an uncomfortable coat, necessary but constraining. At 28, she represented everything society expected from the daughter of William Anderson, CEO of Anderson Delivery Services. Her blonde hair and refined features graced charity event photos, while her Stanford business degree hung proudly in her father's office. But beneath the polished exterior lay a woman wrestling with her own demons. Her passion for running veteran support programs clashed with her family's expectations, particularly the impending marriage to Michael Richardson, heir to Richardson Enterprises. Michael Richardson epitomized old money and newer ambitions. At 34, his chiseled features and practiced charm masked a calculating mind. As the successor to Richardson Enterprises, he viewed his arranged marriage to Sarah as merely another business merger. His recent efforts to streamline Anderson Delivery Services operations concealed a darker agenda, one that would soon threaten everything Marcus had worked for. William Anderson's corner office on the 40th floor told the story of a self-made man. At 58, his silver hair and custom suits projected authority, but the worry lines around his eyes betrayed deeper concerns. He'd built Anderson Delivery Services from a 3-truck operation into a national company, but recent pressures from the board and the Richardsons were pushing him toward decisions he'd come to regret. The photo on his desk showed a younger version of himself in military fatigues, a past life that connected him to Marcus Thompson in ways he didn't yet understand. Behind the scenes, a web of corporate intrigue was tightening. James Morrison, head of operations, led a shadow campaign to discredit problematic employees like Marcus. His alliance with Michael Richardson promised mutual benefits. Morrison would help facilitate the company's acquisition by Richardson Enterprises, while Richardson would ensure Morrison's position in the new hierarchy. Their scheme had already planted evidence suggesting Marcus was stealing from delivery routes. Detective Lisa Carter, a relentless investigator with the Financial Crimes Unit, sensed something amiss in the complaint against Marcus. A 20-year veteran of the force, her instincts told her this case wasn't what it seemed. She'd seen too many good people taken down by corporate politics to accept things at face value. These lives, seemingly separate, were about to collide on a rain-soaked afternoon that would expose long-buried secrets and force everyone to confront the true cost of their choices. Marcus's military honor, Sarah's quest for authenticity, William's past regrets, and Michael's ruthless ambition would create a perfect storm of conflict and redemption. The stage was set against the backdrop of a city divided by class and opportunity, where a simple act of kindness would trigger a chain of events that would test loyalties, challenge prejudices, and ultimately reveal that the greatest distances aren't measured in miles, but in the space between truth and deception, between who we are and who we pretend to be. Anderson Delivery Services stood as a testament to the American dream, its gleaming headquarters towering over downtown Chicago like a beacon of success. Founded 30 years ago by William Anderson with nothing but 3 second-hand trucks and determination, the company had grown into a nationwide operation employing over 10,000 people. Its signature blue trucks had become a familiar sight across city streets, carrying everything from everyday packages to high-value shipments. But beneath the polished exterior, trouble was brewing. The company's rapid expansion had attracted predatory attention from Richardson Enterprises, a corporate giant known for aggressive takeovers. Recent board meetings had grown tense as William Anderson fought to maintain control while facing mounting pressure from shareholders eager for a lucrative buyout. The once friendly halls now echoed with whispered conspiracies and calculated moves. The company's downtown hub, where Marcus Thompson worked, processed thousands of packages daily. His route, covering the affluent Gold Coast neighborhood, was considered one of the most profitable and thus most coveted. Recent months had seen a string of missing packages reported along his route. Though Marcus's record had been spotless during his 5 years of service, the accusations seemed to multiply just as Richardson Enterprises intensified its takeover efforts. Marcus's military background had once been his strongest asset. As a Marine Corps veteran with 2 tours in Afghanistan, his discipline and reliability had earned him multiple Employee of the Month awards. The photos in the break room showed him receiving these honors, standing proud in his blue uniform. Now those same pictures drew whispers and sidelong glances from co-workers who'd once called him friend. Sarah's philanthropic work through the Anderson Foundation focused primarily on veteran support programs. She'd established job training initiatives and medical support funds, though lately her efforts had met with increasing resistance from the board. The foundation's budget had mysteriously shrunk just as she'd planned to expand services to include families of veterans, a move that would have directly benefited people like Marcus and his mother. The investigation into Marcus had begun 3 months ago, coinciding with Michael Richardson's appointment to the Anderson Delivery Services Board. The evidence carefully fabricated by Morrison's team suggested a pattern of theft targeting high-value packages. What the investigators didn't know was that their anonymous tips came from burner phones purchased by Richardson Enterprises' security team. Chicago's financial district buzzed with rumors of the impending merger. Stock prices fluctuated with each new speculation, while small investors worried about job security. The media had begun sniffing around, drawn by the story's potential old money versus self-made success, corporate intrigue, and the human cost of business consolidation. The city itself played a crucial role in the unfolding drama. Its stark divisions between wealth and struggle, power and powerlessness, created the perfect backdrop for a story about justice and redemption. From the gleaming towers of the Loop to the working-class neighborhoods where Marcus lived, Chicago's contrasts mirrored the conflicts about to explode. Eleanor Thompson's hospital room at County General overlooked the Anderson Delivery Services building, a cruel daily reminder of the system that was failing her. The surgery she needed would cost more than Marcus could earn in 5 years, yet the company's health insurance recently restructured. Under Morrison's cost-cutting initiatives denied coverage for pre-existing conditions. The weather had turned stormy that June, as if nature itself sensed the approaching turbulence. Rain lashed against windows, thunder rolled across the city, and lightning illuminated shadowy boardrooms where decisions affecting thousands of lives were made with casual indifference. It was against this backdrop that Sarah Anderson's wedding day arrived, a day that would set in motion events no one could have predicted. Everything was in place: the corporate plots, the personal struggles, the hidden connections waiting to be revealed. All it would take was one act of kindness in a storm to bring the carefully constructed facades crashing down, exposing the truth that lay beneath the surface of power, privilege, and prejudice. The storm hit Chicago with unexpected fury that Saturday afternoon. Rain hammered against the stained glass windows of St. Patrick's Cathedral, where 200 empty chairs waited for guests who would never arrive. Sarah Anderson stood alone on the church steps, her Vera Wang wedding dress already soaked through, mascara creating dark rivers down her cheeks. Her designer heels sank into puddles as passing cars sprayed more dirty water onto her once pristine gown. The taxi driver who'd brought her hadn't waited, despite her pleas, and offered money. "Sorry, lady," he'd said, eyeing the darkening sky. "Can't risk my car in this flood." He'd left her there, clutching a wilting bouquet of white roses that cost more than Marcus Thompson's weekly salary. Her phone, deliberately left behind at her penthouse, couldn't summon another rescue. Marcus spotted her through his windshield while making his final delivery of the day. The suspension notice in his pocket weighed heavy. Tomorrow would be his last shift unless he could prove his innocence. His mother's voice echoed in his mind, "Sometimes, son, the right thing costs everything, but doing nothing costs even more." He'd been taught never to pass someone in need, but today's stakes were different. Every minute delayed was another package undelivered, more ammunition for those trying to destroy him. His truck slowed, wipers fighting the deluge. Sarah's figure grew clearer, expensive dress, elegant even when drenched, the kind of person who normally wouldn't give him a second glance. The kind of person whose complaints could end his career. Through the rain, he saw her shoulders shake with sobs or cold, probably both. His hand hovered over the gear shift, responsibility warring with compassion. "Sophie would never forgive me," he muttered, thinking of his daughter's unwavering belief in doing right. The truck rolled to a stop beside Sarah, water cascading off its blue Anderson Delivery Services logo. The same logo that would soon be replaced by Richardson Enterprises' corporate emblem, though Marcus didn't know that yet. "Ma, he called through the passenger window. "You need help?" His voice carried the careful neutrality he'd learned to use in upscale neighborhoods, where his presence often drew suspicious glances. Sarah turned, startled. Her makeup-streaked face registered surprise, then relief, then hesitation. She clutched her bouquet tighter, years of ingrained caution warring with desperate need. Lightning cracked overhead, making her jump. She began, voice trembling. "My wedding, I can't." Fresh tears mixed with raindrops. Marcus glanced at his delivery manifest, then at his watch. 5 packages left, all marked urgent. His supervisor would check every timestamp, looking for mistakes. But the woman before him looked like she might shatter into pieces, and he'd seen that look before in war zones, in hospitals, in mirrors. "Get in," he said, reaching across to open the passenger door. "Whatever's wrong, we'll figure it out." Sarah hesitated one moment longer, then rushed to the truck. Her dress caught on the door, and Marcus helped free it without thinking. Water dripped from her hair onto carefully labeled packages as she settled into the seat, her wedding dress filling the cabin with the scent of roses and rain. "Thank you," she whispered, hands shaking as she tried to smooth her ruined dress. "I didn't know what to do. I couldn't go through with it. All those people waiting." Marcus nodded, understanding more than she knew about moments of impossible choice. He grabbed his spare jacket from behind the seat, clean and pressed, against regulations but kept for emergencies. "Here," he offered. "You're shivering." As Sarah pulled the jacket around her shoulders, neither of them noticed the envelope that slipped from her dress's hidden pocket onto the truck's floor. That envelope, containing documents that would expose years of corporate corruption, lay forgotten beneath Sarah's wet dress hem, waiting to change everything. Where to, Marcus asked, already knowing he'd just volunteered to destroy what remained of his career. 5 urgent deliveries would sit uncompleted, 5 more nails in his professional coffin. Sarah looked at him, really looked, perhaps the first time she'd truly seen one of her father's employees as a person. "I don't know," she admitted. "I just know I can't go to that church." Thunder rolled overhead as Marcus made his decision. "Then we'll figure it out together," he said, putting the truck in gear. "Sometimes the right road isn't the one on the map." The delivery truck wound through Chicago's rain-slicked streets, windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour. Inside, an unlikely pair sat in companionable silence, a runaway bride and a delivery driver, both unknowingly carrying the weight of life-changing secrets. The radio crackled with weather warnings and traffic reports, providing background noise to their shared uncertainty. "I'm Sarah," she finally offered, fingers tracing patterns in the condensation on the passenger window. "Though I suppose you'll see that in tomorrow's paper. CEO's daughter leaves Richardson Air at alter." Her attempt at humor couldn't mask the tremor in her voice. Marcus kept his eyes on the road, but his grip on the steering wheel tightened. Richardson, as in Richardson Enterprises, the name that had been haunting his termination papers, the force behind his impending unemployment, suddenly had a personal connection. Unfortunately, Sarah sighed, pulling his jacket closer. It was supposed to be the merger of the decade Anderson Delivery Services and Richardson Enterprises. A marriage of convenience in every sense. She paused, studying his uniform. "You work for my father, don't you?" "For now," Marcus replied, carefully navigating around a flooded intersection. Tomorrow's my last day. Funny how things end. He hadn't meant to share that, but something about the moment, the rain, the shared vulnerability loosened his usual reserve. Sarah turned sharply. What do you mean? Why are you being terminated? The corporate executive's daughter emerged briefly in her tone. Marcus laughed without humor. Apparently I've been stealing from my routes. Interesting timing. Just as Richardson Enterprises starts their takeover bid, he hadn't voiced his suspicions to anyone before, not even his lawyer. That's impossible, Sarah said firmly, surprising them both with her conviction. I've seen the foundation reports. Your route has the highest customer satisfaction ratings in the city. She blushed slightly. I review all the employee performance metrics for our veteran hiring program. The truck stopped at a red light, and Marcus turned to really look at her. You run the veteran program? The one that gave me a chance when I came back from Afghanistan. Sarah nodded, then suddenly grabbed his arm. Wait, Thompson, Marcus Thompson. You're the Marine who saved your entire unit. When she stopped, seeing his expression close off. That was a lifetime ago, he said quietly as the light turned green. Now I'm just trying to save my job and get my mother's surgery covered before they cut my insurance. The mention of his mother triggered something in Sarah's memory. She reached for her dress's hidden pocket, then froze. No, she began frantically searching the truck's floor. What's wrong? Marcus asked, concerned by her sudden panic. The documents. I had proof of everything. The insurance fraud, the false accusations, the kickbacks. Sarah's voice rose with desperation. Michael's been systematically destroying your father's company from the inside, targeting employees like you to force a cheap buyout. Marcus spotted something white peeking out from under her dress hem. Is that it? Sarah grabbed the envelope, hands shaking as she verified its contents. Thank God, she looked up at Marcus, determination replacing fear in her eyes. We need to get these to someone who can help. I know a reporter at the Tribune. A phone rang Marcus's work cell. The dispatcher's voice crackled through. Thompson, you've got 5 undelivered priority packages. Explain yourself. Before Marcus could respond, Sarah grabbed the phone. This is Sarah Anderson. Mr. Thompson is assisting me with an urgent corporate matter. Any delivery delays are at my direct request. Please note that in his file. The silence on the other end was deafening before a stuttered, Yes, Ms. Anderson. Right away, Ms. Anderson. Marcus stared at her, amazement mixing with newfound respect. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Sarah replied firmly. You risked everything to help me. Now it's my turn to help you. She straightened in her seat, looking more like a warrior than a runaway bride. First, we expose the truth. Then we save your job and get your mother's surgery approved. Sometimes the right road leads exactly where you need to go. The rain continued to pour, but inside the truck, hope began to replace uncertainty as 2 strangers realized they weren't so alone in their battles after all. A delivery driver risking his last day at work to help a stranger in need deserves 1,000 likes, but this hero hasn't gotten any yet. Can you spare a second to show your support? The Tribune newsroom buzzed with activity even at this late hour. Through rain-streaked windows, Sarah and Marcus watched veteran reporter David Mitchell examine the documents they'd brought. His weathered face grew increasingly grave as he turned each page, occasionally letting out a low whistle. 20 years of investigative journalism had taught him to recognize dynamite when he saw it. This is bigger than corporate fraud, Mitchell finally said, looking up at the odd pair before him, the soaked bride still wearing a delivery driver's jacket over her designer dress. You're talking about systematic targeting of veterans, falsified evidence, insurance fraud. How long has this been going on? Before either could answer, Marcus's phone vibrated. The message made his face pale. Effective immediately. Employment terminated. Security footage shows package theft. Police notified. Clean out locker by morning. His hands trembled as he showed it to Sarah. They're moving faster than we expected, she muttered, then turned to Mitchell. How quickly can you run this story? The reporter's response was cut short by Sarah's phone exploding with notifications. Her father's name flashed on screen, followed by Michael's, then a flood of text messages from wedding guests. But it was the breaking news alert that made her blood run cold. Breaking: Anderson Delivery Services CEO William Anderson announces emergency board meeting. Sources suggest Richardson Enterprises acquisition imminent. turn on the news, Mitchell barked to his assistant. The newsroom's wall of televisions flickered to life, showing Michael Richardson standing at a podium outside Anderson Delivery Services headquarters. The rain had stopped, but water still gleamed on his perfectly tailored suit. Regret to announce that Sarah Anderson has suffered a nervous breakdown. Michael's practiced voice oozed concern. The stress of our upcoming merger has proven too much. Her father and I ask for privacy during this difficult time. That lying bastard, Sarah whispered, watching her fiancé weaponize her absence. Beside her, Marcus stood rigid, recognizing the man who'd orchestrated his downfall. Mitchell's phone rang. Mitchell. Yes, I understand the pressure, but... Yes, sir, he hung up, looking troubled. Richardson's lawyers are already making calls. They're threatening to sue any outlet that runs this story. How long can you hold them off? Sarah demanded. 24 hours, maybe less. They're calling in every favor, pulling every string. Your father's company isn't the only thing they want to control. Marcus's phone buzzed again, this time a call from County Hospital. His mother's surgery had been suddenly rescheduled due to insurance complications. The timestamp on the cancellation notice matched the time of his termination exactly. They're not just coming after us, he realized. They're going after everyone we could turn to for help. Sarah grabbed her purse, determination hardening her features. We need to get to my father before the board meeting. Once he signs those merger documents, it's over. Ma'am, Anderson Mitchell interrupted. There's more. Look at page 37 of those documents. The insurance fraud scheme. It started during the Vietnam War. Your father's signature is on the original papers. Sarah stared at the damning evidence, her world tilting further off its axis. That's impossible. My father would never. There's a note attached, Marcus said quietly, pointing to faded handwriting in the margin. It's from a nurse, Eleanor Thompson. The name hung in the air between them. Marcus's mother, Sarah's father. A connection 30 years in the making. Your mother, Sarah breathed. She was there. Marcus nodded slowly, pieces falling into place. She tried to expose the fraud back then. That's why she was transferred to a combat unit. Why she never got promoted. Why her insurance claims keep getting denied now. Sarah's phone lit up again, a text from her father. Where are you? Don't trust Michael. Need to tell you about Eleanor. Meet me at St. Patrick's. Hurry. The newsroom's TV showed Michael still speaking, his words now carrying a subtle threat. We're concerned about Sarah's state of mind. Any documents or statements she may release should be understood in the context of her current condition. He's trying to discredit you before you can expose him, Mitchell observed. Let him try, Sarah said, straightening her spine. Marcus, we need to get to that church. My father knows something, and I'm betting your mother's story is at the heart of all this. Marcus looked at his termination notice, then at the hospital message. Everything he'd worked for was crumbling, but somehow, standing next to this unlikely ally in her ruined wedding dress, he felt hope stirring. Well, he said, managing a grim smile, at least we know where the church is. St. Patrick's Cathedral stood silent and imposing in the fading light, its Gothic spires piercing the clearing sky. Inside, William Anderson sat alone in the front pew, his silver-haired disheveled suit jacket discarded. The same space that should have hosted his daughter's wedding now bore witness to a very different kind of confession. Sarah entered first, her bedraggled wedding dress catching the light from stained glass windows. Marcus followed, maintaining a respectful distance but staying close enough to protect if needed. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the empty church. Dad, Sarah's voice wavered between concern and accusation. William didn't turn. I always thought I could protect you from my mistakes, he said quietly. But they've come full circle now. Like what happened to Eleanor Thompson, Sarah watched her father flinch at the name. She's Marcus's mother, Dad. The nurse who tried to stop the insurance fraud 30 years ago. The same fraud that's still happening under Michael's leadership. Finally, William turned, his face aging years when he saw Marcus. You look just like your father, he whispered. He was my best friend in Vietnam. Did Eleanor ever tell you that? Marcus stepped forward, emotions warring on his face. No, sir. She doesn't talk about Vietnam. Not since Dad died there. Died saving my life, William added, his voice thick with guilt. I promised him I'd look after his family. Instead, I let them silence Eleanor, buried her evidence, signed whatever they put in front of me to keep my position. I told myself I was protecting everyone's jobs, their families. And now Michael's using the same system to destroy everything you built. Sarah finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. William nodded, pulling out a folder from beside him. These are the original documents Eleanor tried to expose. Proof of everything. I've kept them all these years, too much of a coward to use them. A door slammed at the back of the church. Michael Richardson's voice rang out, calm but menacing. I was hoping we'd find you here. He walked down the aisle like a perversion of the ceremony that should have happened, flanked by 2 security guards. Sarah, darling, you're not well. Let us help you. Marcus stepped protectively in front of Sarah, but she moved beside him instead. I'm perfectly well, Michael. Well enough to expose what you've done. Michael's laugh echoed off the vaulted ceiling. With what proof? Some old documents? The ravings of a runaway bride? The accusations of a thief? He nodded to the guards. Take Mr. Thompson into custody. We have security footage of his theft. No, William stood, his voice finding its strength. No more. I signed those papers in '71 because they threatened Eleanor's life. I won't watch another Thompson family destroyed by my cowardice. Dad, Sarah warned, seeing Michael's expression darken. Mr. Anderson, Michael's voice turned silky. The board meeting starts in 1 hour. Your company's future hangs by a thread. Are you really going to throw everything away for a delivery driver? The moment stretched like a wire about to snap. William looked at his daughter, then at Marcus, seeing the echoes of old friendship and broken promises. He thought of Eleanor Thompson fighting alone all these years while he hid behind his wealth and power. Sarah, he said quietly, remember when you were little, and I taught you that doing the right thing matters more than being rich or powerful. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I forgot that lesson somewhere along the way. He squared his shoulders and faced Michael. The board meeting is canceled. I'm calling a press conference instead. Michael's composure cracked. You're making a mistake. Think about your legacy, your shareholders. My legacy, William interrupted, is standing right here. My daughter, who had the courage I lost, and Marcus Thompson, whose family I failed once before he handed the folder to Sarah. Take these to Mitchell at the Tribune. It's time for the truth. You'll regret this, Michael snarled, all pretense gone. I'll destroy everything you've built. No, Michael, Sarah replied, standing tall despite her ruined dress. You can't destroy what we're about to rebuild. As Michael stormed out, his threats echoing behind him, Marcus finally spoke. Sir, about my mother's surgery. Already done, William said, pulling out his phone. I called the hospital while waiting here. Full coverage, best doctors. It's 30 years too late, but it's a start. The light through the stained glass windows had shifted, painting them all in colors of redemption. Outside, they could hear Michael's car screeching away, carrying old sins with it, while leaving space for new beginnings. Well, Sarah said, looking at the folder in her hands, shall we go make headlines? The Tribune's conference room had become their war room over the next 48 hours. Coffee cups and takeout containers littered the table as David Mitchell and his team worked tirelessly to piece together 3 decades of corruption. Sarah sat surrounded by documents, her wedding dress long since exchanged for borrowed clothes, while Marcus coordinated with a growing network of whistleblowers from within Anderson Delivery Services. Look at this pattern, Sarah called out, spreading papers across the table. Every veteran hired through our program who showed promise was systematically targeted. False accusations, denied promotions, insurance claims rejected. It wasn't just about cutting costs, they were destroying lives. Mitchell nodded, adding another photo to the evidence wall. And it goes deeper. Richardson Enterprises didn't just want to buy your father's company, they wanted to dismantle its veteran support system, make it impossible for former service members to find stable employment. Marcus's phone buzzed with another message from former colleagues. 3 more drivers just came forward. All veterans, all accused of theft, all fired right before their benefits would have kicked in. He rubbed his tired eyes. They even had a nickname for it in HR operation, Clean Sweep. A young reporter burst into the room, waving a fresh printout. You need to see this. We found Eleanor Thompson's original report from Vietnam. It wasn't just about insurance fraud. She uncovered a whole network of medical supply theft. Military supplies being sold on the black market while soldiers died from lack of treatment. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the report. The same people. Michael's father was involved back then. They've been doing this for generations. That's not all, the reporter continued. We tracked down other nurses from Eleanor's unit. They confirmed everything. After she filed a report, there was an accident in the field hospital. Eleanor was the only survivor, but her injuries led to the chronic conditions that need surgery now. Marcus finished quietly. She never told me. All these years she carried this alone. William Anderson arrived, looking older but somehow lighter since his decision to come clean. Not alone anymore, he said, placing a thick folder on the table. These are all the records I kept. Every threat, every cover-up, every time they forced my hand. I was a coward, but I was a coward who kept receipts. Sarah crossed to her father, squeezing his hand. You're making it right now. That's what matters. Mitchell's computer pinged with an urgent email. Breaking news from Washington. The Senate Veterans Affairs Committee just announced an emergency hearing. They're calling it systematic discrimination against veteran employees in corporate America. Michael won't go down without a fight, William warned. He's already calling in favors, threatening advertisers, trying to spin this as a family dispute gone wrong. As if on cue, the newsroom's TV showed Michael Richardson holding another press conference. These allegations are clearly the result of William Anderson's guilt over his daughter's mental health crisis. We remain committed to supporting the Anderson family through this difficult time. Mental health crisis, Sarah scoffed. He's still trying to discredit me. Wait, Marcus said suddenly, pulling up security footage on his laptop. Look at the timestamp on my supposed theft. I was delivering to the Richardson building at exactly that moment. Their own security cameras would prove it. Which means Sarah's eyes widened. They doctored the evidence, Mitchell finished. Sloppy work under pressure. Classic mistake. Another reporter rushed in. Senator Collins just confirmed Eleanor Thompson has agreed to testify at the hearing. She's willing to tell everything. Marcus stood abruptly. I need to get to the hospital. She shouldn't face this alone. I'm coming with you, Sarah declared. Your mother's story started all of this. She deserves to know she's finally being heard. William nodded. Go. Mitchell and I will keep working here. The press conference is in 6 hours. We need everything ready. At County Hospital, they found Eleanor Thompson sitting up in bed, her silver hair neatly combed, looking more determined than Marcus had seen her in years. I saw the news, she said as they entered. About time this all came to light. Sarah approached the bed hesitantly. Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry for what my family's company did to you. Eleanor's face softened. You remind me of your mother. She used to bring cookies to the hospital in Vietnam. Said every soldier deserved a taste of home. She patted the bed beside her. Sit, both of you. It's time you heard the whole story. As Eleanor spoke, her voice grew stronger. She told of young soldiers dying needlessly while supplies disappeared, of William Anderson's desperate attempt to protect his men, of the day Marcus's father gave his life saving William from a sniper, the same day Eleanor's evidence vanished from her tent. They thought they buried the truth, Eleanor finished. But truth has a way of rising like bodies in a flood. Marcus's phone lit up with a message from Mitchell Richardson making moves. Called emergency board meeting, trying to force vote before press conference. Sarah read the message over his shoulder. We need to stop him. No, Eleanor said firmly. Let him try. Sometimes you have to let the enemy think they're winning to catch them in their own trap. She picked up her phone. I need to make some calls. There are other nurses from my unit once who stayed quiet out of fear. It's time we all spoke up. Marcus stared at his mother in amazement. All these years you knew everything. I knew the time would come, she replied simply. I just had to stay alive long enough to see it. She looked at Sarah. Your father was a good man once. Fear corrupted him, but love for you brought him back. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Love and courage. Like mother, like son, she said, glancing at Marcus. Eleanor smiled, reaching for both their hands. Now help me get dressed. If I'm going to bring down an empire, I want to look my best doing it. Outside the hospital room, the city buzzed with anticipation of the coming storm. News vans gathered outside the Tribune building. Reporters sensed a major story breaking, and in boardrooms across Chicago, powerful people began to sweat. The truth, so long buried, was finally clawing its way into the light. And its diggers were an unlikely team: a runaway bride, a delivery driver, a whistleblower nurse, and a repentant CEO, all brought together by a rain-soaked act of kindness that had started an avalanche of justice. The Anderson Delivery Services boardroom crackled with tension as Michael Richardson paced before the assembled executives. Outside, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the downtown skyline. News vans clustered below like vultures sensing death. "This ends today," Michael declared, slamming a stack of documents onto the polished table. "William Anderson is clearly unfit to lead. His daughter's public meltdown, his irrational defense of a thieving employee, these are not the actions of a stable CEO." James Morrison, head of operations, nodded eagerly. "The shareholders are panicking. Stock's down 15% since the wedding fiasco." He didn't mention the offshore accounts where he'd been quietly shorting that same stock. Across town at the Tribune, Mitchell's team worked frantically to verify Eleanor Thompson's growing list of witnesses. Every hour brought new revelations: retired nurses breaking decades of silence, former employees sharing archived documents, veterans stepping forward with their own stories of systematic discrimination. "They're trying to force an emergency board vote," William announced, hanging up his phone. "Michael's calling in every favor, threatening to expose anyone who doesn't support him." Sarah looked up from her laptop, where she'd been coordinating with veteran advocacy groups. "He's desperate." The Senate hearing announcement rattled him. "Not desperate enough," Mitchell interrupted, pointing to breaking news on the newsroom screens. Michael Richardson stood at a podium, his manufactured concern masking barely contained rage. "It pains me to reveal this, but we've uncovered evidence of widespread embezzlement at Anderson Delivery Services. William Anderson's mental state, like his daughter's, appears to be deteriorating. For the good of the company, the board must act swiftly." Before he could continue, the feed cut to a different press conference. Eleanor Thompson, still in her hospital gown but radiating dignity, sat surrounded by a dozen former military nurses. 30 years ago, I witnessed American soldiers die while medical supplies were sold for profit. Her voice rang clear and strong. "When I tried to expose it, they tried to silence me. Today, that same corruption continues, targeting the children of those who served. No more." Michael's phone exploded with messages. His carefully constructed narrative was unraveling. In the boardroom, executives shifted uncomfortably as their phones buzzed with reporters' inquiries. "Find out who authorized that broadcast," Michael snarled at his assistant, "and get our lawyers to shut it down." But the dam had broken. Social media erupted with justice for veterans and Andersongate trending nationwide. Former employees shared stories of wrongful termination. Military forums lit up with discussions of corporate discrimination. At County Hospital, Marcus watched his mother's broadcast with pride and fear. "They'll come after her now," he worried. Sarah squeezed his hand. "Let him try. The whole world is watching." As if on cue, hospital security reported suspicious men in the parking lot. Richardson's people, Marcus guessed, they want to intimidate her before the Senate hearing. Too late, Eleanor smiled grimly. "I've already recorded my full testimony. Senator Collins has the video along with all my original evidence." The hospital room's TV showed Michael Richardson's increasingly desperate attempts to control the narrative. But for every accusation he made, a new witness emerged to contradict him. Veterans, nurses, former employees, decades of silence broken in a cascade of truth. Back at the Tribune, William Anderson made the hardest phone call of his life. "Get me the SEC," he told Mitchell. "It's time to confess my own role in all this." Sarah protested. "Dad, no. They'll prosecute you." "Maybe they should," William replied quietly. "Sometimes redemption requires sacrifice." The newsroom buzzed with activity as the story grew. International media picked it up. Congressional offices issued statements. Veteran organizations announced protests outside Richardson Enterprises. Michael's facade finally cracked during a live interview. When pressed about Eleanor Thompson's allegations, he snapped that senile old nurse should have learned to keep her mouth shut 30 years ago. The clip went viral instantly. In her hospital room, Eleanor watched it with grim satisfaction. "Caught in his own trap," she murmured. Marcus's phone lit up with messages from fellow drivers organizing a nationwide delivery strike. The whole system's coming down, he realized. Sarah's former wedding guests, learning the truth behind her escape, began sharing their own stories of Richardson family corruption. Even Michael's ex-wife broke her NDA to reveal years of corporate misconduct. As night fell over Chicago, the opposing forces gathered strength. Michael barricaded himself in the boardroom with his loyal executives, preparing for the morning's emergency vote. William and Mitchell's team worked tirelessly at the Tribune, organizing evidence for multiple federal investigations. Eleanor Thompson, surrounded by her fellow nurses, recorded message after message, each one exposing another layer of corruption. Sarah and Marcus coordinated between all parties, their unlikely partnership becoming the nucleus of a movement. "Tomorrow's going to be war," Sarah said, watching the midnight news coverage. Marcus nodded, thinking of all the lives damaged by corporate greed. "Some wars need fighting." "I just hope," Sarah hesitated, "I hope when this is over something good can be built from the ashes." Eleanor overheard them. "Something already has been," she said softly, watching her son and the woman who should have been a Richardson bride working side by side to dismantle an empire of corruption. Outside the hospital window, protest signs began appearing in the parking lot. Veterans and their families, having heard Eleanor's broadcast, came to stand guard. They wouldn't let history repeat itself. This time, the truth would not be silenced. The night stretched on, a calm before the storm. In boardrooms and newsrooms, hospital rooms and living rooms, people chose sides. Tomorrow would bring either justice or deeper corruption, redemption or ruin, truth or power. Michael Richardson stared out his office window at the gathering crowds below, his empire crumbling like sand castles before a rising tide. In his hands, he held one last card to play a secret that could destroy the Andersons completely. The question was, in saving himself, how many lives was he willing to destroy? The morning of the board meeting dawned with an electric tension in the air. Anderson Delivery Services headquarters was surrounded by protesters, veterans, former employees, and citizens drawn by the unfolding drama. News helicopters circled overhead, their rotors adding to the growing storm. Michael Richardson arrived early, flanked by security. His usual polished appearance showed signs of strained tie slightly askew, dark circles under his eyes. In the boardroom, loyal executives waited with prepared statements and proxy votes. Everything was in place for his final coup. "Sir," his assistant hurried in, "there's a problem. William Anderson is holding a press conference. Live. In the lobby." Michael rushed to the window. Below, William Anderson stood at a hastily assembled podium, Sarah at his side. Marcus Thompson and Eleanor, still in her hospital wheelchair but radiating determination, joined them. News cameras crowded around as William stepped to the microphone. 30 years ago, I made a choice born of fear," William's voice carried through the building speakers. "I chose protection over truth, profit over people. Today, I choose differently." Michael grabbed his phone, barking orders, "Start the board meeting now. We need that vote before." "This company was built to serve our community," William continued. "But under the Richardson influence, it became a weapon against the very veterans who served our nation. Today, I'm announcing my immediate resignation." The boardroom erupted in chaos. Executives frantically checked phones as stock prices began to plummet. "And my full cooperation with federal investigators," William finished. "The truth can't be buried anymore." Michael slammed his hand on the intercom. "Security, clear that lobby now." But as guards moved forward, a wall of veterans stepped up, forming a protective circle around the speakers. Among them, faces weathered by time and service, stood Eleanor's former nursing unit. "The board meeting is canceled," Sarah's voice rang out. "Federal agents are already in the building." As if on cue, elevators opened on the executive floor. FBI agents emerged, led by Detective Lisa Carter. "Michael Richardson," she announced, "we have some questions about your company's hiring practices." Michael's composure finally shattered. "This is absurd. You have no proof." Actually, Eleanor Thompson's voice came through the speakers. We have 3 decades of proof, including this. The lobby's giant screen flickered to life, showing security footage from 1971, a young Michael Richardson, SR, directing the theft of medical supplies from a military hospital, while a younger Eleanor Thompson documented everything. Found it in my old footlocker, Eleanor explained. Kept it safe all these years, waiting for the right moment. Michael lunged for his laptop, desperate to delete files, but federal agents were faster. James Morrison tried to flee but found every exit blocked by more agents. Down in the lobby, Marcus stepped to the microphone. To every veteran who lost their job, who was denied benefits, who was made to feel worthless, today is for you. Sarah joined him, her voice strong, and to every employee who was forced to choose between conscience and survival, you're free to speak now. The crowd's roar was deafening. Inside, executives began turning on each other, rushing to make deals with federal investigators. Michael's carefully constructed empire collapsed like a house of cards. You're making a mistake, Michael snarled as agents approached. Do you know how many jobs depend on this merger? Jobs built on lies, William countered, stepping off the elevator. It ends now, Michael. Does it? Michael's desperate smile turned cruel. Tell them, William. Tell them who really died in that hospital in '71. Tell them why you really kept quiet all these years. The room fell silent. William's face paled, but Eleanor wheeled forward. You mean how your father let Marcus's father die? She asked quietly. I documented that too. Every detail, every order you countermanded, every supply you sold while good men died. Michael's last weapon crumbled. As agents led him away, his empire fell around him, years of corruption exposed to the light. In the lobby, Sarah found Marcus staring at the old footage, at faces young and full of hope before war and greed scarred them. I never knew, he said softly. All these years, my mother protected everyone else's truth while carrying her own burden. Sarah took his hand. Today we all put down our burdens. Outside, the crowd had grown. Employees emerged from offices, many carrying boxes of documents ready to share their own stories. Veterans stood straight-backed in the sun, finally seen, finally heard. Eleanor Thompson watched it all from her wheelchair, a gentle smile on her face. 30 years of waiting, of protecting evidence, of believing that someday truth would matter more than power, it had all led to this moment. The morning sun broke through Chicago's clouds, illuminating the scene, a corrupt empire falling, a new day rising, and unlikely allies standing together in the light of truth. William Anderson looked at his daughter, at the Thompson family, at the gathering crowd of witnesses and survivors. What happens now? He asked quietly. Sarah squeezed Marcus's hand. Now, she said, we rebuild. The right way this time. And in that moment, as federal agents carried boxes of evidence past Richardson's crumbling empire, hope felt stronger than fear, truth more powerful than money, and love unexpected, unplanned love more valuable than any corporate merger. Just as victory seemed within grasp, chaos erupted. Emergency alarms blared through Anderson Delivery Services headquarters, triggering automatic lockdowns. Computer screens throughout the building went dark, decades of records potentially vanishing into digital oblivion. Server room, Sarah shouted, realizing Michael's final contingency plan. He's destroying everything. Marcus was already moving, years of military training kicking in. The backup servers are in the basement. That's where they'll be. Detective Carter split her team, some escorting Michael to waiting vehicles, others racing to secure digital evidence. But in the confusion, James Morrison slipped away, clutching a hard drive that could implicate dozens of corporate conspirators. Meanwhile, at County Hospital, Eleanor Thompson's condition suddenly deteriorated. The stress of the morning's confrontation had taken its toll. Alarms rang through the ICU as her blood pressure plummeted. They delayed her surgery too long, a nurse explained to the frantically arriving Sarah. The damage. We're not sure we can repair it now. Marcus stood frozen between two crises, his mother fighting for life in one building, evidence of decades of corruption disappearing in another. Sarah gripped his arm, understanding the impossible choice. Go to the servers, Eleanor commanded weakly from her bed. Don't let them bury the truth again. Not after all these years. Mom. Go, she insisted. Sarah will stay with me. Some battles you fight with family, others you fight for family. Back at headquarters, the basement had become a war zone. Morrison's loyal security team engaged in a desperate firefight with federal agents, not with bullets, but with competing programs, each side trying to either preserve or destroy the digital evidence. Marcus navigated the chaos, following the route he'd learned during years of deliveries. He found Morrison in the main server room, frantically downloading files while systematically wiping drives. "It's over, Morrison," Marcus called out. "Federal agents are right behind me." "You don't understand." Morrison's voice cracked with desperation. "Richardson owns everyone. Judges, senators, media executives. Even if you expose this, they'll bury it. They always do." "Not this time," Marcus stepped forward. "Too many people know the truth now." Morrison pulled out a small device. One click. That's all it takes to fry every server in this building. 30 years of evidence gone in a second. Upstairs, Sarah paced the hospital room as doctors worked to stabilize Eleanor. William Anderson arrived, looking haunted. "The documents Eleanor saved," he said quietly. "They don't just prove corporate fraud. They show how deep the corruption goes. Military contracts, judicial appointments, campaign finances. A whole system built on corruption," Sarah realized. No wonder they fought so hard to keep it hidden. Eleanor's monitors beeped ominously. The surgeon appeared, looking grave. "We need to operate now. No guarantees, but waiting isn't an option anymore." In the server room, Marcus and Morrison remained locked in their standoff. Years of military training taught Marcus to recognize a cornered enemy the most dangerous kind. "Think about your daughter," Morrison tried one last manipulation. "The insurance money for your mother's surgery. I can make that happen. Just walk away." Marcus thought of his mother fighting for life, of Sarah's trust, of 30 years of buried truth. "My daughter needs to see that justice matters more than money." The device in Morrison's hand trembled. Behind him, server lights blinked like stars about to die. Sarah's phone buzzed with an urgent update. Eleanor was being rushed into emergency surgery. The doctors needed a decision, a risky procedure that might save her life or end it sooner. "What do I do?" she whispered to William. Her father, who had spent 30 years choosing wrong, finally chose right. "We trust. We hope. We fight for what matters." Marcus heard running footsteps approaching the server room. Seconds remained before federal agents would arrive. Morrison's finger hovered over the device that could erase everything. "Your choice," Marcus said quietly. "Keep serving a corrupt system, or help us fix it." Time stretched like a wire about to snap. In the hospital, surgeons prepared to operate on Eleanor. In the basement, Morrison's hand shook as decades of loyalty warred with conscience. Upstairs, protesters continued to gather, their chants echoing through Chicago's streets. Veterans standing guard, employees sharing stories, a community awakening to demand change. Sarah held Eleanor's hand as they wheeled her toward surgery. "Stay with us," she pleaded. "We're so close to making everything right." Eleanor's eyes fluttered open briefly. "Already right," she whispered. "Truth, finally free." In the server room, Morrison looked at the device in his hand, at the blinking servers containing decades of secrets, at the former Marine standing before him offering a chance at redemption. The sound of justice approaching echoed down the corridor. Time for one last choice. One final decision between truth and power, between conscience and corruption, between hiding in darkness and stepping into light. Above the city, news helicopters circled, cameras recording history unfolding. Below, in basement servers and hospital operating rooms, the real battles continued for life, for truth, for the chance to build something better from the ashes of what was about to fall. These stories of truth and justice deserve to be heard. By subscribing, you help us continue sharing powerful narratives that can change lives. Join our family and be part of something bigger than ourselves. Together, we make a difference. The morning newspapers told the story in stark headlines. Richardson Enterprises collapses, veteran discrimination scandal rocks corporate America, Anderson Delivery Services faces uncertain future. But beneath these bold proclamations, personal tragedies unfolded in quiet corners of Chicago. Marcus sat in the hospital waiting room, his delivery uniform wrinkled from hours of vigil. The surgery to save his mother had stretched through the night, draining their limited resources. His final paycheck, already processed before the scandal broke, wouldn't cover even a fraction of the mounting medical bills. The truck he'd loved, his partner through years of faithful service, had been repossessed that morning. Mr. Thompson, a nurse, approached with paperwork. "We need to discuss payment arrangements." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed with another blow. Sophie's private school had withdrawn her scholarship, citing community standards concerns, a thinly veiled reference to his involvement in the corporate scandal. His daughter's dream of becoming a doctor, nurtured through years of sacrifice, seemed to be crumbling alongside everything else. Across town, Sarah faced her own losses. Her apartment building's management, owned by Richardson's subsidiaries, had terminated her lease. Society friends, many tied to the corrupt corporate network, stopped returning calls. The foundation she'd built to help veterans was hemorrhaging donors, its reputation tainted by association. Miss Anderson, her assistant, approached hesitantly. "The Children's Hospital, they want to remove your name from the wing you funded. They're saying it's complicated now." William Anderson watched his life's work disintegrate. The board, despite Michael's arrest, voted to suspend all operations pending federal investigation. 10,000 employees faced uncertain futures. The company he'd built from nothing, the legacy he'd hoped to leave, was being dismantled piece by piece. "Sir," his secretary's voice cracked. "The ceremonial keys to the city. The mayor's office wants them returned. And your honorary degrees." Even Eleanor, still unconscious after surgery, wasn't spared. Anonymous callers flooded the hospital with threats. Her nursing license, though long expired, was posthumously challenged. The veterans groups she'd supported faced sudden tax audits, their facilities mysteriously failing inspections. The toll mounted in small, cruel ways. Marcus's daughter came home crying after former friends shunned her. Sarah found her charity projects canceled, her presence suddenly controversial. William's neighbors, many employed by companies tied to Richardson, moved away without goodbyes. In the Tribune newsroom, David Mitchell faced his own consequences. Major advertisers pulled out, threatening the paper's survival. His sources in other corporations went silent, decades-long relationships severed by fear and corporate pressure. Dave, his editor, looked grim. "Corporates talking about restructuring our investigative unit." The ripples spread wider. Veterans who'd spoken out found job offers rescinded. Whistleblowers faced sudden audits. The system, even wounded, fought back with the viciousness of a cornered animal. Marcus pawned his military medals to buy Sophie new school supplies. Sarah slept on Mitchell's office couch, her world reduced to a few loyal friends. William wandered empty corridors, watching maintenance workers remove his company's logo from the walls. "Was it worth it?" Sophie asked her father one night, her voice small in their increasingly empty apartment. Marcus looked at his daughter, seeing in her eyes the same question that haunted them all. The cost of truth had been higher than any of them imagined. They'd won the battle for justice, but found victory tasted like ashes. Yet in the hospital, Eleanor's monitors kept beeping, each sound a reminder of resilience. Her old nursing unit maintained their vigil, sharing stories of lives saved and battles fought. The truth they'd protected for 30 years was finally free, though its price was still being tallied. Sarah found Marcus in the hospital chapel, his head bowed. "We knew they'd fight back," she said softly. "Not like this," he replied. "Not by hurting everyone we love." Outside, Chicago continued its rhythm, indifferent to the lives being unmade in its midst. The mighty had fallen, but in falling they dragged down many who dared to stand for truth. The personal losses mounted, each one a testament to the cost of conscience. Yet somewhere in the darkness, seeds of change were taking root, waiting for their moment to break through the ashes of what had been lost. The media storm turned vicious. Conservative networks painted William Anderson as a corporate traitor, liberal outlets questioned Sarah's privileged perspective, and tabloids dug into Marcus's military record, twisting his heroism into sensationalized headlines. Social media exploded with conspiracy theories, some claiming Eleanor had fabricated everything for attention. "Anderson Harris in love triangle with delivery driver," screamed one headline. "Veteran nurse S war story question," declared another. The character assassination was relentless, designed to discredit not just their claims but their very integrity. In the ICU, Eleanor's condition worsened. Infection set in, complications multiplied, and doctors spoke in increasingly guarded terms. Marcus spent nights in the uncomfortable hospital chair, watching his mother fight for life while his own world crumbled. The medical bills mounted with crushing inevitability, each day adding thousands to a debt he could never repay. Sarah found herself isolated in a way she'd never experienced. Former friends shared photos from parties she wasn't invited to, charity boards quietly removed her name, and her own relatives suggested she take some time abroad until this blows over. Her phone, once constantly buzzing with social obligations, fell silent except for reporters seeking scandal. William faced his own darkness. The board of directors, in a midnight coup, voted to distance the company from its founder. His office was cleared, his parking space reassigned, his Lifetime Achievement Awards quietly removed from the lobby. 40 years of building something he believed in, reduced to a cautionary tale in corporate newsletters. The veterans who'd supported them began facing mysterious audits. Their support groups lost funding, their meeting spaces were suddenly unavailable, and many found their VA benefits under routine review. The system's retaliation was subtle but devastating, designed to silence through systematic intimidation. Detective Carter called with worse news: key evidence had vanished from police lockup. Backup servers were found mysteriously corrupted. Witnesses began recanting, citing misunderstandings or confused memories. The legal case, once seemingly airtight, started showing dangerous cracks. Their winning Sarah whispered one night in the hospital waiting room, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "Everything we fought for, everything we lost, they're still going to bury it all." Marcus couldn't disagree. His daughter Sophie had stopped talking about medical school, the dream seeming impossible now that her father was branded a troublemaker. The proud veteran community that had once stood with him was being slowly, systematically broken apart. Even David Mitchell at the Tribune faced defeat. His editor called him in, regret heavy in his voice. "They're shutting down the investigation, Dave. Orders from the new owners. Story's dead." The darkness seemed complete. Eleanor's monitors beeped weakly in the night, each sound a reminder of what truth had cost them. Sarah's foundation accounts were frozen, its mission of helping veterans now tainted by controversy. William wandered his empty house, surrounded by photographs of a life that no longer existed. Chicago's winter closed in, harsh winds howling through streets where protesters had once stood. The city moved on, attention shifting to newer scandals, leaving behind the broken pieces of those who dared to challenge power. In the hospital chapel, Marcus stared at stained glass windows dark with night. Maybe, he said to the empty room, some things should stay buried. Some prices are too high. Sarah found him there, her own despair matching his, the wealthy Harris and the delivery driver, both stripped of everything they'd been, everything they'd believed in. Outside, security cameras tracked their movements, a reminder that they were still being watched, still considered dangerous. Eleanor's old nursing colleagues stopped visiting, their own retirements suddenly under review. The veteran groups disbanded, their members choosing survival over solidarity. The truth they'd fought to expose was being reburied, not with violence or scandal, but with the quiet efficiency of systemic power. In the darkness of that moment, with Eleanor fighting for life, Marcus's career destroyed, Sarah's world shattered, and William's legacy in ruins, victory felt like a cruel joke. They had won the battle but were losing the war, their triumph turning to ashes in their mouths. The system they'd challenged wasn't just fighting back, it was showing them the true cost of defiance, teaching them why others had chosen silence, making them understand the price of standing alone against the darkness. The turning point came from an unexpected source. A janitor at Richardson Enterprises, cleaning the executive bathroom late one night, found a phone that Michael had dropped in his panic. The device, cracked but functional, contained years of incriminating text messages, emails, and photographs. "You need to see this," Detective Carter said, spreading the contents across the hospital waiting room table. Marcus and Sarah leaned forward while William adjusted his reading glasses. The evidence was damning: detailed plans to target veteran employees, manipulated insurance claims, even photos from Vietnam showing Michael's father orchestrating medical supply theft. But the real breakthrough came buried in the phone's cloud backup. There, in a folder labeled Contingency, lay Eleanor Thompson's original report from 1971, complete with her signature and official military stamps. The document had been kept as leverage, insurance against any whistleblowers who might emerge. They never destroyed it, Sarah breathed. They kept it to protect themselves. Simultaneously, across town, an elderly man walked into the Tribune's offices. Thomas Reed, former military photographer, had spent 50 years carrying the weight of what he'd witnessed. In his trembling hands, he held a metal case containing hundreds of photographs from the Vietnam War. "I was there," he told David Mitchell. "I saw everything Mrs. Thompson reported. I took pictures of it all." The photographs were Extraordinary Richardson, SR, directing the removal of medical supplies, Eleanor documenting discrepancies, William Anderson trying to intervene. Most crucially, they showed the day Marcus's father died not in random combat as officially reported, but while trying to stop a theft that would have left his unit without medical supplies. "Your father was a hero," Mitchell told Marcus, showing him the images. "They buried the truth to hide their shame." The evidence kept mounting. Eleanor's old nursing colleagues, inspired by her courage, began sending in their own documentation. Letters, diary entries, supply manifests, each piece adding to the puzzle. One nurse had even kept a microfiche copy of the original investigation hidden in a family Bible for decades. Then came the recording that changed everything. A dying security guard, conscience heavy with secrets, had maintained an audio archive of every executive meeting at Richardson Enterprises. Years of conversations captured Michael and his conspirators planning their takeover, targeting veterans and orchestrating Eleanor's accident. "I installed those recording devices in '85, the guard explained from his hospice bed. Been copying everything since. Figured someday someone would need the truth." The FBI's forensic team worked through the night, authenticating each piece of evidence. The pattern was undeniable: decades of systematic corruption, all documented by people who'd waited years for justice. Sarah found more proof in her mother's old diaries, discovered in the Anderson family vault. Her mother had been secretly supporting Eleanor's cause, channeling funds to veteran support groups and documenting Richardson family corruption. She died believing her work was unfinished. Mom knew, Sarah told her father, tears streaming as they read the diaries together. She was fighting them too, in her own way. The veterans community mobilized again, this time armed with irrefutable evidence. Military records were unsealed, showing how supply shortages had led to unnecessary deaths. Former soldiers came forward with stories of denied benefits, each account matching patterns documented in Michael's phone. Eleanor, still recovering from surgery, watched from her hospital bed as Mitchell broke the story. The Tribune's front page blazed with 50 years of truth photographs, documents, testimony, a half-century conspiracy exposed in devastating detail. "Look at this," Marcus said, showing his mother the photograph of his father's last day. "He died protecting his men, just like you always said." Eleanor touched the image gently. "Truth finds its way," she whispered, "no matter how long it takes." The evidence spread like wildfire across social media, picked up by international news organizations. Encrypted files from Michael's phone revealed connections to other corporations, exposing a network of discrimination that spanned industries. William found redemption in his own records. Though he'd signed corrupt agreements, he'd also maintained detailed documentation of every threat, every coercion. His apparent complicity had been a long game of gathering evidence. "I thought I was a coward," he told Sarah. "Maybe I was just waiting for the right moment to be brave." The security guard's recordings proved especially damaging. Michael's voice, clear and cruel, outlined plans to destroy not just Anderson Delivery Services, but dozens of veteran support programs nationwide. Detective Carter worked with federal prosecutors, building an airtight case. The evidence trail led to judges who'd dismissed veteran lawsuits, politicians who'd blocked investigations, executives who'd enforced discriminatory policies. "This isn't just about one company anymore," she told them. "This is about systemic corruption targeting those who served." As night fell over Chicago, the truth rose like a cleansing tide. Decades of darkness gave way to light, secrets surrendered to justice, and the walls of privilege and power began to crack. In her hospital room, Eleanor held the original report she'd written 50 years ago, her hands tracing words that had waited so long to be heard. Outside her window, news helicopters circled the Richardson building, where federal agents continued gathering evidence. The truth, so long buried, had finally found its voice, and this time no power on earth could silence it again. The federal indictments fell like thunderbolts across Chicago's corporate landscape. Michael Richardson was arrested at his private airfield, attempting to flee to a non-extradition country. James Morrison surrendered at dawn, offering testimony in exchange for leniency. Board members, executives, and corrupt officials were led away in handcuffs, their crimes exposed to the world. 47 arrests so far, Detective Carter announced in the hospital conference room, now their unofficial headquarters. The investigation spans 6 states, 3 decades, and dozens of corporations. This is bigger than anyone imagined. The Senate Veterans Affairs Committee convened an emergency session. Eleanor Thompson, still recovering but unbowed, testified via video link. Her voice, strong despite her weakness, echoed through the chamber as she detailed 50 years of corruption. "I speak not just for myself," she declared, "but for every veteran who served their country only to be betrayed by corporate greed. For every family denied benefits, every soldier who died from lack of supplies, every truth that was buried in the name of profit." The impact was seismic. Corporations across America scrambled to review their veteran hiring practices. Insurance companies faced massive class action lawsuits. Military supply contracts underwent intense scrutiny. The system that had protected the powerful began to crumble. Sarah watched from the gallery as Michael Richardson faced justice. His expensive lawyers couldn't spin away the evidence in his own phone, the security recordings, the photographs that showed decades of calculated cruelty. Guilty on all counts, the judge announced. The sentence was unprecedented: 30 years, no possibility of parole, and complete asset forfeiture. The Richardson empire, built on corruption and suffering, collapsed in a single afternoon. Marcus stood with fellow veterans outside the courthouse as the verdict was read. Cheers erupted from the crowd, but his eyes were on his phone, showing his mother's hospital room where she watched the proceedings with tears of vindication. The Richardson Foundation's assets will be redistributed to veteran support programs, the judge continued, under new leadership jointly managed by Eleanor Thompson and Sarah Anderson. William Anderson's testimony proved crucial in dismantling the corrupt network. Though he faced consequences for his past compliance, his detailed records helped prosecutors uncover corruption across multiple industries. His sentence was commuted to community service, specifically helping rebuild the veteran support systems he'd failed to protect. The Anderson Delivery Services Board, facing their own reckonings, voted to restructure the company. Their unanimous decision surprised everyone. Marcus Thompson would take over as CEO with a mandate to rebuild the company around veteran employment and ethical business practices. From delivery driver to chief executive, Sarah teased, helping him move into the corner office. "My father would say that's the American dream done right." Eleanor's recovery accelerated as justice prevailed. Each new conviction seemed to strengthen her spirit. The hospital, facing its own investigation for discriminatory practices, suddenly discovered her surgery could be fully covered by insurance after all. "Funny how that works," Detective Carter commented dryly. The media narrative shifted dramatically. International coverage praised the whistleblower's courage. Veterans shared their stories on national television. Eleanor's nursing unit received long overdue recognition for their service and sacrifice. The security guard who'd maintained the recordings lived just long enough to see Michael Richardson sentenced. His final words, given in a videotaped deposition, became a rallying cry. Sometimes justice takes time, but it always needs witnesses. Corporate America underwent a transformation. Companies rushed to establish veteran hiring programs. Insurance regulations were reformed. Military supply contracts faced new oversight. The power structure that had protected corruption for so long began to transform. In the Tribune newsroom, David Mitchell received the Pulitzer Prize for his coverage. But more meaningful was the letter from Eleanor Thompson, written in her increasingly strong hand. "Thank you for helping truth find its voice." The Richardson building was converted into a veteran support center, its gleaming offices now serving those it had once oppressed. Sarah and Marcus cut the ribbon together, their unlikely partnership a symbol of change. William Anderson, watching his daughter and Marcus transform his company into something better, found peace in the justice he'd finally helped achieve. Sometimes, he told Eleanor during her recovery, we have to lose everything to remember what matters. The system's collapse revealed unexpected heroes: secretaries who'd copied documents, janitors who'd saved files, workers who'd remembered details that proved crucial. Justice came not just from the mighty falling, but from the quiet courage of those who'd watched and waited. As winter turned to spring, Chicago saw a new order emerge from the ashes of corruption. Veterans found doors opening instead of closing. Corporate boardrooms diversified. The power of truth proved stronger than the power of money. Eleanor Thompson, finally released from hospital, attended the ceremony renaming Anderson Delivery Services to Thompson Anderson Veterans Alliance. Standing with her son, watching Sarah unveil the new logo, she smiled at the full-circle journey of justice. Some battles, she told the assembled crowd, take a lifetime to win, but as long as someone stands for truth, victory is possible. The system had been broken, but from its fragments something better was being built. Justice had prevailed not in a single moment, but through the accumulated courage of those who'd refused to let truth remain buried. 1 year later, the Thompson Anderson Veterans Alliance headquarters buzzed with purposeful energy. The lobby, once dominated by corporate awards, now displayed photographs of veteran employees and their stories. The corner office, where Marcus sat reviewing quarterly reports, had become a symbol of transformation. "Our veteran hiring rate is up 300%, Sarah announced, entering with fresh data. "And retention rates are nearly perfect." She placed a stack of files on his desk, each one representing a life changed, a future restored. Eleanor Thompson had become a regular presence in the building, her wheelchair navigating corridors where she'd once been unwelcome. Her recovery, though incomplete, had become an inspiration. Veterans sought her counsel, employees learned from her wisdom, and her weekly leadership seminars drew crowds from across the industry. "Tell us again about 71 new hires," would ask, and Eleanor would share not just the story of corruption exposed, but lessons about integrity, persistence, and the courage to stand alone when necessary. The foundation, jointly managed by Sarah and Eleanor, had revolutionized veteran support nationwide. Using Richardson's seized assets, they'd established medical care programs, job training initiatives, and family support services. The waiting room where Marcus had once worried about his mother's medical bills now bore her name, the Eleanor Thompson Veterans Care Center. William Anderson found his redemption in mentoring young executives about ethical leadership. His cautionary tale became a case study in business schools, but it was his practical guidance on resisting corruption that truly made a difference. "Success without integrity," he would say, "is just failure in disguise." Sophie Thompson, now in pre-med studies at Northwestern, had started a support group for veterans' children. Her father's story had inspired her to combine medicine with advocacy, planning a career that would bridge healthcare gaps for military families. The Tribune's investigation had sparked a national movement. David Mitchell led a new investigative unit focused on corporate accountability, while Detective Carter had been promoted to head a specialized division handling corporate fraud against veterans. The old Richardson building, converted into the Veterans Resource Center, housed medical clinics, legal aid offices, and job training facilities. Its glass towers, once symbols of corporate power, now reflected a different kind of strength: the power of community and justice. Marcus and Sarah's partnership had deepened into something neither had expected. Their different worlds had merged into a shared vision, their unlikely alliance becoming a blueprint for change. They were often seen in the late hours, planning new initiatives or solving old problems, their commitment to the mission matching their growing commitment to each other. The company's delivery trucks, repainted with the new Thompson Anderson logo, became recognized symbols of veteran employment. Each driver had a story, each route represented opportunity, and the customer satisfaction ratings had never been higher. Eleanor's original nursing unit had reunited, establishing a mentorship program for military medical personnel transitioning to civilian healthcare. Their experiences, once silenced, now guided a new generation of healthcare advocates. The security guard's recordings had been donated to a new corporate accountability museum, alongside Eleanor's original report and the photographs that had exposed 50 years of corruption. Visitors learned not just about past wrongs, but about the courage required to right them. William's office, now a conference room for veteran support programs, displayed a simple plaque: "Truth has no expiration date." Beside it hung the photograph of Marcus's father, Eleanor's report, and the first Thompson Anderson veteran hiring announcement. The company's annual veteran recognition ceremony had become a citywide event. Chicago's mayor, business leaders, and community organizers gathered to celebrate not just military service, but the ongoing fight for justice and opportunity. As spring returned to Chicago, the Thompson-Anderson building stood as a testament to transformation. Its halls echoed with purpose, its mission clear, its impact measured not in profit margins, but in lives changed. "Look at what we built," Sarah said one evening, standing with Marcus at the window where Michael Richardson had once plotted destruction. "No," Marcus corrected gently, watching veterans enter the building with heads held high. "Look at what Truth built. We just helped clear its path." Below them, the city stretched out, its corporate landscape forever changed by one storm, one act of kindness, and the courage of those who'd refused to let justice be buried. The true merger, it turned out, hadn't been between companies, but between hope and action, between past and future, between those who served and those who finally learned to serve them back. The legacy of the Thompson-Anderson transformation rippled far beyond Chicago's corporate skyline. 5 years after the Richardson Empire's fall, industry journals and business schools still studied the case as a watershed moment in corporate accountability and veteran advocacy. Eleanor Thompson, though officially retired, remained the company's moral compass. Her weekly fireside chats, now streamed nationwide, drew thousands of viewers seeking wisdom about courage, perseverance, and the power of unwavering truth. Justice, she would say, is like a seed. It needs time, care, and sometimes the storm before it can grow. The company's veteran hiring model had been adopted by corporations across America. What began as one delivery company's redemption became a blueprint for ethical business practices. The Thompson-Anderson standard became shorthand for corporate integrity and veteran support. Marcus and Sarah's partnership had blossomed into marriage, their ceremony held in the same church where their story began. Sophie, now in her second year of medical school, gave a speech about the day a storm brought her father to a runaway bride, and how that moment changed not just their lives, but an entire system. The Veterans Resource Center, housed in the former Richardson building, had expanded to 20 cities. Each location offered comprehensive support medical care, job training, legal aid, and family services. The waiting rooms displayed before and after photographs of veterans who'd entered seeking help and stayed to become leaders. William Anderson, though long retired from corporate leadership, found his true calling mentoring the next generation of business leaders. His courses on ethical leadership and corporate responsibility became mandatory at top business schools. "Power without purpose," he taught, is the root of corruption. The security guard's children established a whistleblower protection fund in their father's memory. The fund supported those who risked everything to expose corporate wrongdoing, ensuring that future truth-tellers wouldn't stand alone. Eleanor's nursing unit stories became part of military medical training curriculum. Their experiences taught new generations about the cost of silence and the power of documentation. The Eleanor Thompson Medical Ethics Award became one of healthcare's highest honors. Detective Carter led a specialized FBI division focused on corporate crimes against veterans. Her team's investigations, inspired by the Richardson case, uncovered and dismantled similar schemes across the country. "Corruption fears sunlight" became her department's unofficial motto. The Thompson-Anderson annual report included not just financial metrics, but lives improved statistics. Each number represented a veteran hired, a family supported, a future secured. The Wall Street Journal called it the new standard in corporate social responsibility. David Mitchell's investigative journalism unit trained reporters nationwide in exposing corporate corruption. His team's mantra, borrowed from Eleanor, reminded them that truth never expires, it just needs witnesses. Sarah and Marcus's leadership style became a case study in corporate transformation. Their morning walks through the delivery hub, talking with drivers and sorters, exemplified the hands-on, human-centered approach that defined the company's revival. Sophie's medical outreach program for veterans' families expanded nationwide. "Healthcare isn't privilege," she would say at fundraisers. "It's a promise we made to those who served." Her mother's fighting spirit lived on in her determination to heal both bodies and systems. The original storm-soaked wedding dress, preserved in the corporate museum, symbolized how unexpected moments could spark systemic change. Beside it, Eleanor's nursing uniform and Marcus's delivery jacket reminded visitors that courage wore many uniforms. Chicago's corporate culture underwent a lasting transformation. the Thompson Anderson building became a landmark of ethical business practices, its lights glowing each night like a beacon of possibility. The company's success proved that profit and purpose could coexist, that doing right could also mean doing well. As new challenges arose, the lessons of the Richardson scandal guided responses. Transparency replaced secrecy, accountability replaced impunity, and veteran support became corporate priority. The real victory, Eleanor told her last fireside chat audience, isn't just in exposing what was wrong, but in building what's right. Each day, each decision, each person who chooses truth over convenience, that's how change becomes permanent. The story of a storm, a bride, a delivery driver, and a nurse became more than corporate legend. It became a reminder that justice, though sometimes delayed, arrives with the force of thunder when truth and courage meet. In the end, the Thompson Anderson legacy wasn't just about corporate reform or veteran support. It was about the power of individual choices, the strength of unlikely alliances, and the enduring truth that one act of kindness could spark a revolution of justice. Touched by Marcus and Eleanor's story of courage and justice, your support means everything to our team. Don't forget to hit subscribe to join our storytelling family. Like if this story moved you. Comment your thoughts and emotions below. Share with friends and family who need to hear this message of hope. Should we continue their journey in part 2? Let us know in the comments. Together we can keep sharing these powerful stories of everyday heroes. Each subscription helps us bring more untold tales to light. Thank you for being part of this incredible journey.